G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder with Mags. Today we're taking a look at the newest jet bomber to be added to the game, the Tupolev Tu-14T. The Tu-14T is a rank 5 battle rating 8 Soviet jet bomber. It's armed with two forward-firing NR 23mm cannons with 170 rounds of ammunition in total, along with two rear-facing 23mm NR-23s mounted to a turret in the tail with access to 700 rounds of ammunition between reloads. It can carry a selection of bomb loads, the largest being a single 3,000kg Fab 3000M bomb, and its single unique point is that it can carry the 450mm 45-36 man aerial deployed torpedo. In history, the Tu-14 was developed on the basis of the Tu-73. The Tu-73 was Tupolev's competitor to the Il-28, and while being larger, it was based on a similar base-approved fuselage design. The Tu-73, however, was a failed design, with the Il-28 being selected as the main jet bomber of the Soviet Air Forces. To recover what remained of the project, Tupolev began development of the Tu-14, with a specific design goal of being a land-based aircraft for support of naval operations. Its development carried with it much of the original approved airframe design, which is why there are similarities between the Il-28 and the Tu-14T. Its service life, however, was only 7 years. Rapid developments in aviation technology at the time, not to mention aircraft countermeasures, such as radar-guided anti-aircraft fire and the beginning developments of guided anti-aircraft missiles, forced its retirement, with many of the aircraft being sold to China and the remaining aircraft used as technology test platforms. In the end, the aircraft was large, expensive, and designed to fulfill a role that had been made extremely dangerous due to advancing technologies, with an incredibly high chance to lose the aircraft. In War Thunder, it faces similar but worse problems. But first things first, let's talk bomb options in the Tu-14T. The Tu-14 has a wider selection of bomb options than the Il-28, but in the end it all amounts to the same thing, with the same maximum bomb load as the Il-28. The Fab 3000 is the biggest bomb that you can carry and the single biggest load of explosive that you can deploy, but you have options for a Fab 1500, 2 Fab 1000s, 4 Fab 500s, 8 Fab 250s, 16 Fab 100s or 16 Fab 50s, depending on your choice. Most cases, for the way that War Thunder's meta plays out in regards to bombing, you're going to be after the larger bomb. The Fab 3000 has enough explosive potential to be able to take out a single base in a single hit or destroy a single carrier in a single hit. It's a guaranteed kill of whatever you drop it on. But of course the catch is, much like the Il-28, you can only carry one, so you're effective in the destruction of a single base, and from that point, well, you don't really have a major play point inside of the battle anymore. You can try and return the aircraft back to base, which is generally what I do, to try and pick up a second bomb on the off chance that I can get to deploy it. And you do have forward-firing weapon systems and a defensive gunner, so you can try and engage hostile fighters. There is also the third option of trying to run for altitude and avoid the enemy, but I never find that one to be overly appealing, and, well, I just don't do it. And impact on the base, 3-second bomb delay, and boom, base destroyed. Now from this point, I do try and pick up a few fighters on the way through. I find it tends to help, even if you can't engage them. Suddenly being charged by an enemy bomber, especially one with forward-firing guns, can tend to force the enemy a little bit out of position, which can sometimes help. Although occasionally you do run into those wonderful circumstances when somebody decides that going head-on with your bomber is the best choice. Head-ons are always a bad idea. Having that many 30mm AIDEM cannons does not render you immune to incoming fire. But regardless, at this point I can continue trying to engage enemy aircraft, or I could head for the base, and I choose to do the second option. It's a fairly long flight back, so we have some other things to look at, so I will come back to this match a little bit later. As I said before, in War Thunder the Tu-14 faces all the problems of the real-world aircraft, along with a few extras in its role as a torpedo bomber. To demonstrate this, I've set up a custom battle on a Pacific map with just myself and the AI in biplanes. I've done this because the Soviets don't often get maps where you have to engage naval forces, so I'm trying to find a workaround. Now, this game mode is of course set to realistic, however I have left the arcade weapons reloads turned on, so I can make several passes on the target as needed without having to return to base to get new torpedoes every single time. Anyways, the Tu-14 was intended to slip into an AO where either hostile fighters were not present or had been neutralized to engage hostile naval targets with its torpedo loadout. Now, the torpedo in question is the 450mm 45-36 man aerial deployed torpedo. It's the only option for torpedo loadout available and comes in at 970 kilograms, and it's powerful enough to kill a carrier in-game in a single impact. But like all torpedoes, it comes with a few restrictions. Firstly, it cannot be deployed at an altitude over 344 feet, or just slightly over 100 meters, so you have to be at a very low altitude on approach to your target, sacrificing energy and the small level of safety offered by being at altitude. The second restriction is speed. You cannot deploy this torpedo at a speed at over 378 km per hour. Doing so will destroy the torpedo and impact with the water. This means that you need to be both low and slow while being in range of hostile anti-aircraft fire. And you will be within range. The stat card lists the torpedo's maximum speed at 74 km an hour in the water, and I have timed this and it's quite correct. But the one stat that is not listed is possibly the most important one: range. I wasn't able to find a listing for this particular torpedo, but I did manage to locate several other 450mm sized torpedoes used by the Soviet Union in the time frame the Tu-14 was in operation, and at least 2 of these were used by the Tu-14s as well. These torpedoes all had one thing in common: around a 4 km maximum range. Assuming that the 45-36 man is the same, which it does seem to be from my tests, you will need to be both low and slow and within 4 km of an enemy carrier group and its escorts and all of their AAA defences to even be able to release the torpedo. And then if you release at exactly 4 km to minimise your time within the hostile's firing range, with a maximum speed of only 74 km an hour, you will need to aim at your intended target with a lead time of 3 minutes and 14 seconds. That is to say, you will need to aim at where your target is going to be over 3 minutes before it gets there. If you misjudge that distance or the carrier happens to turn anywhere within that 3-minute period, your torpedo is likely going to miss the target and you're not going to get any kill for your effort, and still have to travel all the way back home to pick up a new torpedo. Now, of course, you can increase your chances of actually hitting the target, making your own worth it, by simply releasing the torpedo at a closer range, but the closer you get, the more likely you are to be taken out by AAA. But it works in halves. At 2 km, your travel time to target is 1 minute and 37 seconds. Much closer and much easier to lead a torpedo on, and if you can get even closer to the target and release that torpedo, due to the torpedoes in War Thunder not having a minimum activation range, or at least none that I've noticed, you can get your chance to hit pretty much to perfect, guaranteeing yourself a carrier kill. But unfortunately, the same can also be said for the AAA. While War Thunder's AAA is rather overpowered at the lower tiers, at the maximum jet tier, it actually serves as a reasonably good example of what a radar-guided anti-aircraft weapon system would actually look like to approach. And you can see this would be the problem that a Tu-14 would face. And at this point, we're still operating in an environment where you are the only thing flying in the area, or at least the only thing of any consequence. War Thunder's matchmaking is 16 versus 16 inside of an arena environment, so you will have numbers of aircraft, possibly up to the full 16, that are all capable of killing you. At the speed you've got to release the torpedo at, you're going to be so vulnerable that even the bombers will be able to kill you with absolutely no problems whatsoever, putting you into a situation where you are at an incredibly heavy level of risk of just simply being destroyed before you can even get your torpedo off. This level of risk, coupled with the effectiveness of bombs and the accuracy of bombs dropped from altitude, as you'll see here with the Fab 3000 bombing the same carrier, is why torpedoes are not heavily used, and why, even with the naval component of War Thunder coming in, I seriously doubt the torpedoes are going to become a commonly used item. So, we've made it back to base and we're getting ready to take back off and get back into the fray. But this does leave us with the question: if the torpedoes, which are the one major unique feature of the Tu-14, aren't really all that effective, and you can actually be more effective in a safer way with the Fab 3000, what else is there to separate this aircraft from the IL-28 that we already have in game? The truth is, not a lot. The Tu-14 can dive slightly faster, it's slightly slower in the climb rate, it's slightly worse in a turn, although its wings can sustain slightly more G-forces, it's slightly more tolerant in that area. Overall, in terms of flight performance, the two aircraft are fairly similar, with not a lot to split between them. So, in the end, if you don't have a Russian jet bomber at all, either one is a good choice. But if you have one Russian jet bomber already unlocked, there's really not a huge amount of reason to unlock the other one. The main reason why you unlock both with all of the other nations is because generally the first jet bomber is unarmed, the second jet bomber is armed. In Russia's case, not only are both aircraft armed, but they're armed with exactly the same weapon systems, in exactly the same layout, in exactly the same way, with exactly the same ammunition loads. There is no advantage to unlocking the second if you have the first. And that's even considering the wider variety of bombs that the Tu-14 has access to that the IL-28 doesn't. These are bomb loadouts that you're really never going to use. I doubt you'll find much reason to take 16 100-kilogram bombs in over one 3,000-kilogram bomb. And some people really just never bloody learn. Anyways, yeah, my conclusion on this particular aircraft: if you haven't got a Russian jet bomber unlocked, there's absolutely no reason to not get the Tu-14. It's a great jet bomber. But at the same time, if you do happen to already have the IL-28, there is absolutely no reason to get the Tu-14. There is pretty much no situation where the Tu-14 is going to be more effective than the IL-28 that you already have. So, unless you're a collector and you're trying to unlock every single aircraft in the Russian tree, or you have absolutely nothing else to unlock in the Russian tree, I don't actually suggest you really bother with the Tu-14. Spend your hard-earned research points somewhere else to get a more interesting aircraft. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this video very much. I hope you found it informative, and thank you very much for watching. Please remember to give that like button a big tick and subscribe if you want to see more and you haven't already to the channel. And until next time, fly smart, fly safe, and I will catch you in the skies.